Hi, and welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. My name is Nikki Vo, and I'm your host. I'm a boat owner, a marinas owner, an international conference presenter, and a huge advocate for boating. I'm sharing the stories from every nook of the boating industry with the intention of encouraging more women to join me and for more women to get behind the helm too. I want to share the experience and opportunities of boating, of the boating industry, and I want you to join me as I bring the conversations and answer all the questions you've had. Boating is not just for the glamorous and rich and famous. It's full of beautiful and interesting people making the most of our natural environment and getting out there enjoying the waterways. So let's let off the lines, take over the helm, and escape to the world of boating. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Boat Princess podcast. It's a beautiful day here in France. We're sitting on a gorgeous terrace in La Rochelle. It is, of course, ICOMIA Congress for 2024, and I am talking to the amazing Su Lin. She's just giggled. She's when I said amazing, she just giggled. So, Su Lin Cheah, who is you give me your title, my darling.
I'm ICOMIA's Asia representative. Yeah.
Fantastic. And ICOMIA, of course, is the International Congress of Marine Industry Associations. So that's the MIAs, the BIAs from all over the world that come together, and ICOMIA represents them on a world basis. ICOMIA is based in the UK, but Su Lin has recently organised the first conference that ICOMIA had in the Asia region. Tell us how that went.
That went very well. Yeah, we had great feedback from the delegates, and there was pretty much a resounding call for another one. And we've got a lot of interest to even hosting it as well. So it's going to be really interesting. After now that Congress is over, we'll be looking into how the next conference will work, where we're going to do it, how often. So yeah, there are a lot of people that are waiting on that.
That's exciting. So when you say hosting, you're saying countries sort of putting their hands up and saying, we'd like to do this.
That's right. So it's something that we'd like to see the members get involved in. Not necessarily in one location, although Singapore is a fantastic location for conventions and meetings. And of course, we had a fantastic venue as well at 115 Marina, and there were amazing hosts. But we'd like to see the opportunity open up if possible, if the members are interested to bring it to their countries. In the same way as we do with World Marinas conference. Yeah.
Yes, of course, because that moves around all over the world, doesn't
it? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and these things will evolve because, in the past years, conferences have always kind of either settled down in Hong Kong or Singapore, and sometimes in China as well, depending on the topic. So it's something that we want to develop, but do it in a moderated form, and still be able to curate it, kind of, because Asia is still, I shouldn't say new market, because we've been at this for the longest time, but it's not a mature market. Let's put it this way.
No, it's a real, I guess it's coming to fruition. It's finally blossoming, isn't it?
Well,
in Asia,
we hope. We hope. I like to say, and I tell people this, I said, Asia is like the bridesmaid. It's constantly been the bridesmaid, and it's not been able to get to the altar, if you like.
Yeah.
And we are very much affected by what happens in the mature markets. We've been affected by financial meltdowns and things like that. And we have always had a really great trajectory, and then because of something that's happened in a bigger market, we get impacted by that. So hopefully Asia now, there's a lot of focus now in Asia,
Yep.
that it will start to come, to its own,
Yeah.
and be able to determine its own future. And I think this, seeing what we saw in the conference, I think that was a really good indicator. The other one was also that, and it was quite interesting, somebody had this observation, which I didn't, because, I'm in the thick of the organization. And it was that we had a greater proportion of delegates from the region. In the past, it was, from Europe or from America, from another market, from Australia. But this one, we had a lot of Asian delegates. And that, I think, is an indicator that the region itself is getting, more involved and more engaged.
That's
And
fantastic.
that's what we really like to see more of.
Well, that's the point of it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And we're really excited that we've got now, and this is not really well known, that ICOMIA's got now today 9 members, and it's time that ICOMIA actually comes forward and be more involved with what's happening in Asia. The dynamics are different, market information, intelligence, that's what the rest of the world wants to know. And it's a really good time for ICOMIA to get in to the region more, and understand what the region is saying, and be able to transmit that to the rest of the members. And we saw that in Congress. I've had a lot of questions, what's happening out there,
Yeah.
And very excited to be able to start communicating to the rest of the family
Yeah.
about us.
Yeah. So 9 members in your region you're talking
Yes.
about?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
So where
right.
does your region cover exactly?
Okay, so Asia would be anything from South Asia. So you've got India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, get down to Sri Lanka, and then you sweep over to Southeast Asia, and then right up China, and then East Asia. That would cover it.
And where do you see the I guess the most prominent space of boating in that region? Is there a particular area that you think is really growing at the moment?
Southeast Asia will always be, the focus, basically because of the marine resources that we've got there. Focus very much marine tourism. So in Asia, that is the, one of the channels by which the boating lifestyle can be introduced, and promoted. So because we've got an amazing sea, a lot of us locally, we will call it ASEANarian. So in keeping with Mediterranean and the Caribbean. So, it's amazing body of water. So a lot of potential for boating, and charter is very healthy, right from, everybody knows Phuket, Andaman Seas, all the way down to Singapore. Then you've got the boating, so-called boating markets, where it's more like the wealth centers of Singapore, Hong Kong, where you have a lot of the sales going on. Not necessarily where the boats might be parked, because the marinas there are full.
Yeah.
But those are the wealth centers, and those are centers that you want to watch what's going on there. So to say where the market is kind of difficult, because where people purchase is not necessarily where they play,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is. It is actually. And Asians are very much, especially at the upper tier, the wealthy, they're global. They're everywhere. They might buy in Hong Kong, but they may keep the boat in Palma, for instance. So we're not stuck within the region. So like I said, the dynamics for Asian buyers is different.
And as I understand it, the wealthy Asian buyers are very secretive too. They very much keep themselves to themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very often at that level, you are not interacting with the owner. You're interacting with their representative. It can be helpful, but at the same time, it can be also a barrier, depending on whether the representative has got their own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing with Asia in business, and a lot of Asian owners consider having a yacht as part of their business. So there's a lot of trust involved. And brokers have to work really hard to develop that trust, to develop that relationship, and hopefully be able to get closer to the owner, or at least closer to understanding what the owner is seeking in the yacht. Yeah. And that can make or break, continual, sales and developing the relationship is very, very key.
Yeah, really important. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that can take years sometimes, can't
absolutely. It? Absolutely. I mean, we hear in Asia a lot of, which sales got closed, the value of the sales that got closed in the show and all that. By the time you hear about that sale would have been a culmination of maybe 24 months of work.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you close the deal. Oh, I saw the yacht. Oh, I got to have this yacht now. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something that those coming into brokerage perhaps don't understand. It's especially in the top end of the yacht game. It's a long game.
It's a long game. Exactly. Yeah. And if you are, if you are taken in by the hype, by all the marketing about boating, you're in for a bumpy ride, because sure isn't that way.
So talking of which, you've been in this industry a long time. So you've done the long game. Tell me how did you fall into this industry? Did you want to come into this? How did so you've studied, and tell me about the very start of your career. What did you want to do?
I was a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to, I was studying graphic design, typography. That was what I really wanted to do, art. And I came back. Yeah, I came back and I started from rock bottom, worked my way up. So I did that for about 5-6 years.
Where did you do that?
In Malaysia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I came back to Malaysia and I did that. I was, studying in the UK. And then I had the opportunity of joining an insurance company in the promotions marketing department, the department that gets everything else that nobody wants to do. Which was, it was very, very interesting, because one of the things that I got involved in, which has helped even, along the way, and even handling the conferences, my biggest thing was doing conventions for the insurance agents.
Okay.
So for 3 years, taking, we had, almost 300 agents to move every year and take them to amazing places and doing tours and sales conventions and things like that. So we took them to China, we took them to America, we took them to Europe, and that was an experience in itself.
Yeah,
moving these guys, and you had to take care of them because they were high performers, and
that was an incentive for them to.
That's right. Yeah. They were incentive trips. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was amazing.
Keep them motivated and
Yeah. Exactly. And then I had the opportunity of moving through the organization and ended up in strategic planning for some reason. And I remember asking, the division head, I said, that's not what I'm trained in. This is not what I do. And he just said straight off to me, he says, Su Lin, you know the organization. You're a people person. And if we're going to make any changes, we need to be able to connect with the people. I've got people here can do the analysis and the planning and, all the productivity things. But how are you going to get, the staff to change? How are you going to make those kind of things? Because at the end of the day, it's going to be people that's going to be operating this business. I said, well, okay, cool. And I was fine. Yeah, because, because people can companies can make amazing strategic plans and corporate plans and things like that. And then they try to push it out, but people don't understand. The staff don't understand. They feel threatened. And then things start to fall apart.
Yeah, and you're a good communicator, so that's where you're.
Yeah. That's kind of where I went with that. And strangely, I also became known as somebody that could actually sort stuff out,
get stuff done
that people didn't understand or didn't want to do.
Yeah.
So I call it janitorial services. Uh, so like cleaning up divisions that have not, done well, given very tight restrictions like, okay, you've got this budget, but we want you to spend 30% less. You can't hire anyone. If you can trim down, that'd be great. Those kind of constraints, and which I found great. If
you just found them as a challenge.
I found them as the challenge, and I said, well, if you can give me those things, and I say yes, will you move aside and let me do the job?
Yep.
And I've had bosses that have been able to tell me that and just say, okay, I'll give you this basket of whatever, and I'll move aside, and you get it done.
Yeah.
Right. And that's always worked out. And I've been very, very privileged and blessed with people that I've worked with that I've been able to gain their trust, I guess, and they've allowed me to just push out and try things.
Yeah.
That's not normally been tried before.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's been good. Yeah. And
so you're at the insurance firm.
So it's an insurance firm. I stayed in there for quite a long time. And the last thing that I did with them was actually the Y2K project, when everybody thought that,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Come 1999, December 31st, midnight, everything would just collapse.
Yes.
All right. Of course, nothing happened.
Yeah. And in fact, there was a great movie about that in those two towers in Malaysia, wasn't there?
Oh, the Twin Towers?
Yeah. There was a movie there that they manipulated that very situation to transfer a whole bunch of money across and all that, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But of course, none of that happened.
No, none of it happened.
Yeah. So I took a break. How I got into the yachting thing, I know it's a bloody long story, but so I took a break after that project, and I wasn't doing anything. And then this friend of mine, he owns a yacht brokerage firm in Malaysia, and he said, "You're not doing anything." I said, "No, I'm quite happy not doing anything." He says, "Why don't you come and sell boats?" I said, "I know nothing about boats." And he said, "Well, you dive," because at that time I was a dive instructor. So you dive, you sail, you this, you that. You know what I mean?
So you know the lifestyle of boating.
I know the lifestyle,
yeah.
But of course I didn't know that was the lifestyle stuff, right? And I said, "Well, yeah, okay, right, but I still don't know anything about boats." I said, "Well, I've got a shipyard. You can wander around in there, and they'll tell you about boats." So I learned I learned about boats by being in a yard. I learned about the business by following him around on his deals and understanding how he was talking to Malaysian customers and things like that.
So he was a mentor for you?
Yeah, he was generous in sharing his information, and I got to go to shows. He was the dealer for Ferretti Group.
Okay.
And
fairly big group.
Yeah, very big group. And let me out to dealer meetings and things like that. So, just went out and absorbed. Again,
great.
Gained his, had his trust to be able to go out and just learn and absorb and all that. So very, very, very grateful for that experience. But being a yacht broker was tough back then because there weren't any women in the game. It was a man's game. And a lot of it still is, but I'm very happy to see more and more women brokers today, and they're doing amazing work. I mean, these women that I see, and they're just some of them are even more aggressive than the guys. They're doing really, really well. So back then I was not really recognized as a yacht broker. I was the clerk, the assistant, the PA, sometimes the girlfriend, sometimes the mistress. It's like
whatever they wanted.
You were anything,
whatever box they wanted to put you in.
Yeah, but not your broker. But I think eventually it wasn't quite where I was happiest, because I felt that there were certain things that hard selling wasn't me, and I felt a bit that the industry was asking for that, so it didn't sit well. I could do it, but it wasn't, where I was comfy.
It wasn't in line with your values in terms of how you like to operate as a person.
Exactly. I mean, that's not how I want to buy. I don't buy things that way. Yeah. So I didn't appreciate myself trying to sell it that way. So one day I had a call from somebody from, well, he was in, they were in Brunswick, an arm of Brunswick, and asking me whether I was interested to be boat manager. And I had a chat, and I ended up in Singapore for 9.5 years for Brunswick Boat Group.
Wow.
Yeah, and primarily taking care of the Sea Ray brand, Boston Whaler. Those were the brands that they wanted to get out to the region. And I guess just to pat myself on the back, I'd say that we created, if anything, together with the dealers, the cruiser market in Asia, because as you know, Asia is always known as the large yachts,
Yes.
mega yachts, super yachts, and the cruiser market, 35 feet. That's what was just not there.
Yeah.
It was a really blank space, but the product that the Brunswick Group had was really perfect at that time. Middle class was coming up, young professionals. Those days we call them the yuppies. Great income disposal. It was all there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had also a couple of dealers that were in the right age group, the right, professional background, that just worked for the brand.
Yeah.
And they did great promotions, didn't depend so much on boat shows. It was more experience events. And that's what works in Asia, is that personal connection. And it was a good few years.
Yeah, fantastic.
Then of course we had the 2008 meltdown, and that took us into a spin, and that market basically evaporated, and it's taking a while for it to come back.
Even now.
Even now.
Wow.
Yeah. But you've got the super yacht sector, the mega, they are doing well.
Yeah.
They're doing, and hopefully if they can be sustained, and they are in a very good spot. A lot of work is being done there, and they will be the one again to hopefully draw in the lower segment.
Yeah.
And build that up again.
Imagine your ad for your financial services being in this podcast right now. It will be available to audiences right around the world, and this ad will be there forever. If you'd like more details about how to sponsor the podcast and advertise with us, simply contact us on theboatprincess.com. So tell us about some of those experiences that you did for clients that were that achieved those sales for you for Brunswick.
Well, in Brunswick, Sea Ray had a Aquapalooza event where they would bring all the Sea Ray customers with their boats on the lake, and they brought in other, if you had a boat, it didn't matter what the brand was.
I think that's really...
They would raft up. And I know the dealers in Australia did amazing work and did their own Aquapalooza.
Yeah.
Fantastic, guy. They did an amazing job. So in Asia, we did it in a small one. Simpson Marine was our dealer back then. And they do very, very good customer events, connecting with the customers, and the network is pretty spread out in Asia. They're the largest yacht brokerage firm. So they
literally invited a whole bunch of people to come to the water,
yes,
and enjoy the boats, and be together.
Yeah.
And what did you do? Did you put on some entertainment, or
yes.
what did you do?
Yes,
yeah,
all of it.
Yeah,
big party.
Okay,
that's really it. A big party, a weekend, or a day out. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that actually translate better to promoting the lifestyle. People seeing that, how do you enjoy the boat? How do you use the boat? Right. And it's not just about buying it and parking it and having a party on the dock. You need to go out. You need to do stuff. And then, of course, you've got dealers of sailboats, for instance, they're the ones that do the rallies. And very often you see marinas in particular, like in Singapore, would do rallies going up to Phuket and then coming back down again. It's those kind of experiences that we need to have more of, for people to understand what boating is about. And then we have to explain the lifestyle a bit, and go beyond the luxury profile that we currently have. Unfortunately, boating, yachting, is still an elitist activity. We need to break that down somewhat, but that's the nature of the beast in Asia. It is, and hopefully, the large yacht sector is going to be able to draw the mid-size segment, bring that in. That is not all about the big boats, the top end of
the
it.
big white boats.
Yeah, exactly. Asia's got a ways to go.
Yes,
but there lies the potential.
Yeah.
Really, as long as dealers and distributors have got that wider view of the business, and be able to play the long game. I think that's what people need to be doing, and not just think, it's just rich people. You know what I mean? It is expensive. I mean, to be very honest, it's an expensive thing. Boating is expensive in Asia, but there are many things that the dealers, with a long-term planning, can start thinking about. Okay, how do I break this down?
Yeah.
How do I localize this? How do I involve community and things like that? And that's one of the things that I'm glad that I'm in ICOMIA, want to be able to communicate. There is a perception that, for instance, ICOMIA is only dealing with smaller boats because of the word boating, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that the whole industry understands that we're here for the whole, not just the small boats, right up to the super yachts, because we have to look at it as an industry. Super yachts need to understand that, hey, you need the smaller boat community as well, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's it's going to be a challenge in Asia to try to change that perception, not just in the consumer, but also in the distribution system as well.
Yeah.
Because that's the prevailing mindset.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did that come about? How did you end up being who you are in ICOMIA?
This goes by ages, really. Because I'd known about ICOMIA since probably 2010.
Yeah.
One of my very good friends in the industry, YP Lok, who is the
Oh,
chairman.
we love
of,
YP.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Most generous man
Yes.
on earth.
Yeah.
YP, if you're listening to this, just shut your ears. He is. Yeah.
No, I think he should hear that.
He should.
Yeah, he should hear that. Yeah.
He's lovely.
Yeah.
So I'd known about ICOMIA through him, all the work that ICOMIA does, all the work that he's been doing over the years, and had been discussing with him about founding the Singapore Boating Industry Association. I was in Singapore at that time, so I knew what he was working on and trying to pull and formalize something. And over the years, I've always felt, ICOMIA, why aren't you out here more? Mm-hmm. We need the global organization to make sense of all these pieces that are going on in the various markets, And I've always stayed in the know. I've always stayed connected with the industry. I did spend 8 years of being out of the industry. I was retrenched from Brunswick, the way the industry goes these days. And so I took a step back and I said, okay, maybe I just need a break. I'm going to rest and not do anything. And I went and did other stuff. But I always stayed connected. And during even those years, we managed to do an online forum engaging with the market practitioners, doing, giving updates and stuff like that. And one of those forums, there was a call for more organized discussions, and there was a call for ICOMIA to actually take leadership for that. And that's how our ICOMIA Asia working group came to being. And in 2022, that got approved by the board, which was really, really good. And then very soon after, YP made a call to Joe Lynch, CEO, and said, well, if you're interested to do something in Asia, there's this person.
This is your person.
This is your person. Have a chat with her and see whether she's interested to do stuff here. So I had so I was contacted by Joe, had a chat, and I said, okay, let's try this.
Fantastic.
Let's try this.
Yeah.
So it's been a ride.
And from there, the conference came and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the conference came about because, the Singapore shows have always had a conference element. And 115 Marina had just acquired Singapore Yachting Festival. And so there was then a chat. And this was through SBIA, our member. And YP came to us and said, look, here's this show, and we want to put a conference element in there. Is there something that we could look at? And so I said to Joe, okay, here we go. Let's go for it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was driven really by the fact that ICOMIA had already done the reporting on the Ricardo project over in Europe, right?
Yeah.
So they'd done it from August previous year.
Yes.
And I said, well, there's nothing been done in Asia. Let's complete the loop. Let's take ICOMIA and bring it right round.
Yeah.
Because the last one was the briefing that the BIA had done in Australia. So I said, let's pop it. And I said, a Singapore event would be the right thing. And we then curated a program that revolved around that. So we had a whole day that just talked about decarbonization, sustainability, what could be done. We even had guys that came in and talked about, these are entrepreneurs from Singapore.
Yeah.
And they were talking about what they had been doing, what they were creating. And it was a session called Green Mobility in Sustainable Cities, because this was Singapore. So, and then we ended that day. Oh, this one had a lot of positive feedback. It was ocean conservation and clean boating. There was a lot of engagement on that. So that was great feedback.
That's fantastic.
And then we brought it back round on the second day, half day, because one of the things that we asked ourselves is, okay, great. We're talking about sustainability. It's a really big issue, something that's really for the long term. Business is going to ask, so I still need to do business tomorrow. What's the value in this conference? What do I take away?
Yep.
So the second day was all about the yachting business. And what was important in Asia, advocacy is a tough issue in Asia. How do we communicate with regulators? How do we get them to understand us? How do we understand them? What do they want to hear in order to, accept that boating is part of the story, that it is an industry? We had a fantastic session on economic value of boating that Marianne Edwards moderated. Lots of feedback on that. The panelists brought in, a lot of information from their own industries and how they made a difference in the community. And then we talked about, how industry can start engaging in Asia. What do they need to do? How do we need to communicate? Again, these are the things that are the building blocks, and people need to understand, because industry has always talked about, regulators are not understanding us. This is an obstacle. That's an obstacle. But industry needs to take charge and say, okay, do the regulators have the right information about us in order to do what is needed? But if we are not supplying them with the data proper information, not anecdotal, not feelings, not emotion, not this lifestyle thing, but real facts as to how the industry is contributing to community, regulators are not going to understand. So we need to, industry needs to really grow up
Yes.
in a way, right? And understand back. Because as far as governments are concerned, they see a guy in a big boat, you don't need my help because you're the ones that should be contributing back.
Yes.
So, yeah, so that's one of the things that we wanted with this conference, and also for future forums and all that, just to try to start providing the tools to the industry so that they can communicate better to the people that are actually determining their future.
Yeah, because they can literally, I mean, we've got that issue going on in the US at the moment, haven't we, with they're trying to, boats only being allowed to do 10
Yeah, that's
knots.
insane.
Yeah. And it's all down to a particular whale species.
Yeah, that's right, the right whale, right?
Yeah. And it's actually the ships that are hitting them,
Yeah.
Recreational boats simply don't. But the recreational boating is going to be potentially not able to go more than 10 knots in that region, which
crazy,
is
right?
Yeah. So that means some boats simply won't be able to do what they do, and people won't be able to go, wakeboarding and, all the wonderful things that are part of the boating lifestyle.
Exactly.
They simply won't be able to do ever again, which is, and it's all because, somebody's decided that on emotion and on incorrect information, that is what's needed. It's not what's needed at all. So, so therefore it's up to industry, as you say, to actually say, look, guys, this is not the facts. This is not reality. This is here's the facts. Yeah. And put that forward. So and that's, I know industry is doing that.
Through, that's going to wipe out, a big segment of the industry, right? Because you're asking now boaters to go further out in order to enjoy the water. I go further out, I need a different kind of craft.
Yes.
Now, what's happened to the mid-size? You go back to that cruiser story again, right? And what is the bulk of the industry in America? For instance, that's the segment.
Exactly right.
You're going to wipe them out.
Yeah.
Or, it's going to be a big dent, right? So, sustainability, environmental awareness and all that. And I know I'm going to get killed for this statement. It has to be practical.
Yes.
Life still needs to go on. People still need to earn a living and all. You have to work from where you are. You cannot go back to the days of pristine water. You don't have it. You got to start right here. This is what you got, and how you're going to manage going forward. That's how sustainability should be seen. Not about trying to scrub your bathtub clean. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
To me, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to be really, really practical. But it has to be driven by the right information, the right studies, and so on. Yeah, being green is great, but you've got to be armed with the right information.
But the ideology has to be, I guess, turned into reality.
Yeah,
doesn't it? And
exactly.
we have to look at it from a very as you say, practical aspect of it.
Yeah,
because those cruisers that are enjoyed in that space in America, there are families that's their enjoyment of life.
That's
right. That for some of them that's their mental release.
Yeah.
So and we need to look after the humans as well as the whales. Right. Totally. Yeah. Got to look after the whales, but we've got to look after the humans as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And, the Wallace J. Nichols blue mind theories and all those wonderful research that's been done about how important being in, on and around the water to humans is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we're not totally against humans in the process that we're doing to help the animals.
Right, exactly.
Right?
And it goes back to, if anybody that does life saving, you save yourself first before you're able to save somebody else. So if we don't take care of ourselves, how are we going to take care of all the other animals around us or anything around us, right? So, but again, it's a balance. You don't want to be, taking care of me too much. This self-awareness is also a two-edged sword. I'm very careful about that. I'm wary of anyone that's really into, the self-love thing. I draw a line. There is a line to be drawn, that you can't have too much self-love.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think some people go overboard with that. Yeah. Anybody who knows me would tell you that, Su Lin has got an edge. There are certain things that I just can't tolerate. I can't, and I'll just call it as it is. I says, okay, that's enough self-love. That's enough of this thing. Now, what are you going to give back? What's the purpose in all of this kind of thing? And it comes back to my work today. I was just telling somebody yesterday that I just feel really lucky that this is like, I'm 62, and to have this opportunity is like, this is probably my third, fourth round at doing something different.
Yeah.
But being able to actually now bring all the crazy stuff that I've gotten myself into, and now there is a reason. Because previously I was just doing it because it was different. But now it's like I'm doing similar things that I used to do, but it's like, oh, okay, I needed to do that nutty thing, and it's useful now. I needed to be involved with the Singapore Yacht Show back then. It's making sense now. I needed to, to be bashed in as a yacht broker to understand what it's like to be a yacht broker, or to understand what the yacht business is going through. You need to be at the front and the back and everything before you can actually help with the big picture. You can't ask somebody who hasn't gone through a few knocks and bumps and pit holes and ask them, oh, have the big picture. Doesn't work.
And interestingly, I think your maturity brings that to the table, because we do change our mindset as we mature. That, we've got to do something about this because we can make a difference, because we do have those skill sets to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you don't realize that you need them. At the time you're just going, oh my God, why is this thing happening to me? Why is shit happening to me all the time? And you got to trust, in a sense, you know what I mean? Even when trust is not possible, but, but I always tell myself, even in the darkest moments, and I've had amazingly dark moments, I said, you know what, so then, you may be pissed drunk right now, or you may be at the bottom and sitting on this floor, you are going to wake up tomorrow. You're going to wake up tomorrow. The powers that be, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is not going to let you off that easy. You will wake up, and you will have to figure out what it is that you're going to have to do all over again. And time again, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still waking up in the morning, and I'm still... And I just hope that every day that I wake up, that there is something else that I haven't done. That's really what I want. You know what I mean? I love working. Doesn't matter whether it's a holiday or not, but I love working. I love having a purpose. I love having something else out there to do. Most time people are telling me, are you sure you want to say yes? I've had more people stopping me and saying that. And it's good. I've got, angels, even Joe. Yeah. Was saying, are you sure? Are you sure you want to say yes?
But he tells me you're a real powerhouse. So, I know everybody was incredibly impressed of what you just pulled together for the conference in a fairly short time. You didn't get a lot of time to organize that, did you?
5 months.
Yeah,
5
that
months,
is not long.
I think Oh wait, no, it was about 5 months. It was really short, and I had to be, yeah, I had to, in certain areas I had to be a bit autocratic.
Yeah.
I have to say,
Yeah.
but I was amazed by the team that worked with us from 115. These young people, patient as heck. You know what I mean? They could have turned around and said, but they just went, okay, all right, just take it.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, they were incredibly patient. They were resilient. And on the day, we got it done.
Yeah.
We got it done and we pulled that off. I think I was very grateful for the support of the speakers that came on board and worked with me to develop the program. We have discussions. I gave them, because they're all professionals, they're all experts in their own field, and I believe in, okay, this is the framework, this is the overview, this is kind of where I'm thinking to go with this. Now, how would you develop it? You're the moderator. I'll give you this set of panelists because I think these are the guys that would bring different aspects to the discussion. Now, where do you think you're going to take this? And that was, coming and going a little bit. Okay, I think we're going to go do this and develop it and all that. So it wasn't just me putting down, okay, this is the title and this is the overview. I gave the moderators a kind of a challenge. I threw it to them and I said, okay, and if you want to get together with the panelists, talk through it, because I didn't believe in, okay, we'll meet on a day and it's not useful. And I think the way the discussions developed, because they had some engagement before, in the weeks before, that really helped to, formulate what was presented on the day. So people were comfortable already. They already knew where they were going to go. They knew the direction. They pretty much knew what was the objective of the session. So it wasn't your regular panelist that says, oh, what do you think about this? Cold call kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, you got to give something to the audience. What's the audience going to pull back? We did get feedback that, we don't want talking heads and things like that. So yeah, a couple of sessions turned that way, but most of the others were not. And we mixed it up also by not just having chairs and just talking. Each of the panelists had like 10 minutes to have presentations and then sit down and talk about their presentations. And I think that was very useful to the delegates. Otherwise, it would have been just a talk show. We would have been slave for that. Would not have worked.
Yeah. Because the boating industry never lets you get away with bad performance, does it?
No. They're very quick in telling you that. Very, very quick. Yeah. But I think our program was tight. We didn't have too many lulls. It was very chop, quick. Good feedback that, networking was very useful to people, of course. So yeah. And we got people, we had a good mix of people. And what I wanted was to have people from different parts of the industry and not just the boating industry. So I got people from the Global Decarbonization, Maritime Decarbonization Center. That's in Singapore. They do maritime commercial. So having Dr. Sanjay come in and be a moderator with talking to people that were from the other side of the sectors, again, made the discussion different because he brings in a different line of questioning, a different thought process. We had Stephen Bain that talked about finance, ESG. He's head of ESG in an asset management company. So, and it turned out that's something that we might want to bring back because suddenly there was an interest because he was talking about, okay, the focus now is on ESG. How do we evaluate, right, in order to fund sustainability projects?
Just explain to our listeners what ESG is.
It's environmental and social governance. So that's an increasingly important factor in business. Is people want to know what are your contributions in ESG, and it's more and more financial, especially the banks, financial institutions want to know what are you doing in this area, because that becomes a key part of the business now. So
That includes gender investment too, doesn't it?
it does.
Yeah.
It does. Right across the board.
Yeah.
Right across the board. I think we had a little glimpse of that. Kelly Worthington presented that donut. That's really what they're focusing. So many facets that they're looking into in order to determine whether this is going to be a good investment or not. And again, sustainability is expensive, right? But how are you going to show with data, with research, with the correct analysis that, your project or your initiative is worthy of the finance of that investment, that support. So it's a new field still. People are still working it out. So we want to be able to draw that and inform the industry that, this is out there. This is not something that you use. It's not a greenwashing tactic or anything like that. You know what I mean? In the same way as I think that previously it was CSR that was the big deal, right? So now CSR is nobody's really into it now.
Yeah.
So now it's ESG. So yes, all this is new. And all these conversations that we want to bring out and have people get ourselves educated on it. I mean, there were a lot of things that came out in the conference that I was doing. I was just sitting there and learning in the same way. And that made that experience for me personally very, 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 very interesting. So it's not just boating.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important part, because the boating industry is a great one, but it does tend to sort of look upon in on itself a lot, rather than going to other industry and saying, hey, how do you do this?
Yeah.
The car industry is a perfect example, right?
Exactly, yeah.
They've done selling cars in a completely different way to how we sell boats. So I think future events bringing those other industries in and those other people that are doing things differently is really exciting, because then you can learn so much. And that's the whole point of the event, right? Is to learn, collaborate.
That's right.
Help each other, all those sorts of things.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, it's like what we had at Congress, right? We've got people who've run businesses in auto, in aviation and all that, right? Process is the same. Process is the same. Business processes are the same. Manufacturing is the same. It's just a case of what do you produce at the end of it that determines, how the marketing or the sales and the distribution might be different, right? But basically the processes are the same. What do you want to achieve, right? What innovation is, what are the the things that change? It's time. Time is what changes. How quick do you need to be? That's what changes. Nothing else changes. All right. You're still going from A to B to C, the same process, same steps. So some people, as I can't remember his name, Arthur, was saying some things don't change in 40 years and some things change in 2 years.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so same with people as well. We all grow old, but how are you going to grow old? When are you going to grow old? You could grow old at 25. You can grow old at 85.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
There you go.
So a couple of things you said in your conversation with me. One, the team from the marina in Singapore were so fantastic and problem solving. And I think that's something that we sometimes, those people outside the industry potentially don't understand, that marina teams are continuously solving problems.
Yeah.
And they're actually really, really good at it. And those that want to come into this industry, if they're in the event management space, the hospitality management space, all those sorts of areas where that is what you're doing, you're solving problems all day, then the marina space is an amazing space to come in for that and enjoy the lifestyle at the same time.
Yeah.
And also your comment about doing events with cruisers and bringing people in that didn't necessarily own a Sea Ray, but you wanted them to own a Sea Ray. So you brought them to that event. I think that's another thing that some of our brands out there should think about. They often have these, if you're an ex-brand owner, you're allowed to go to this event.
Yep.
And I don't never understand that. I think, well, you're not going to change them to one of your boats unless they actually see what you do. Yeah. Right?
Exactly.
You know, they can put it on social and all that sort of thing. But then unless they're actually part of that sort of family feel that you give it when you do those events. And some brands do. Some brands invite other boat owners of different types in, but others don't. And I find that quite bizarre.
No, that's and that I think is changing. It has to change.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the industry is too small.
Yes.
Right? And you want to protect your customer base and all that but you can't. Customers will go wherever. These days, customers go wherever.
Absolutely.
Right? And get on the internet. They can see the boat without even stepping on a boat.
And sometimes it's based on the ESG policy of that company building that boat as opposed to
exactly.
Well, that's what I've always had.
Correct.
Yeah, they're changing that behavior.
Yeah. Customers are looking at other reasons for buying from you. How do you behave? Not just your product, but how do you behave? You know, what kind of broker do I want to be? What kind of people do I want to be associated with? You know what I mean? They can smell a hard sell from miles away. They can see it, right? They're not idiots. And you do have a few, but by and large, they're not idiots. And so we have to give customers a lot of credit. You know, just as we are trying to attract them to boating instead of buying the latest motorbike or, you know, buying the latest bike for that matter, you know, even the simplest thing. But they are making very, very intelligent decisions.
Very informed too.
Very, very.
Yeah. Do you have a new release of product or a new boat that you'd like us to review at a boat show? Get in touch at info@theboatprincess.com and our team will be very happy to chat with you about that.
Going back to when I got into this business and why my friend thought that, you know, I could work, it could work for me, was one thing that I noticed when I went around with him was whenever we sat down with a prospect or a friend of his that was looking for a boat and all that, we never talked about a boat.
No.
We never talked about the boat. In those days, he was talking about the watches, the pens, the collection of this and the collection of that. It was life.
Yes.
And how much did you understand the person? What did he like? And things like that. Then maybe at the end of the conversation, it may be, oh, I'm going to Europe with the family and all that kind of thing. That you might say something like, well, if you're going to be passing through Italy, why don't you stop by the shipyard? Yeah, maybe. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then we'll go back to watches again. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of a regular broker, we just say, okay, here's the boat, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And that takes time.
Yes.
That takes relationship building for somebody to trust you enough to bring you in. People don't spend enough time.
No.
They don't. You know what I mean? I'm very grateful for even this podcast because the reason why I giggled is because I've not had anybody that interested to ask, because it's a bloody long story. It's a damn long story, and it's like, okay, how many days do you have?
But it's an interesting one. And that's the thing. And I think that's what I love doing about this podcast. Mm-hmm. You and I know each other, but we don't know each other well. Now we know each other a lot better.
Right.
Because I've had the joy of hearing your story, and we've shared that joy with our listeners as well. Mm-hmm. And they're actually really interested to hear that story, because everybody's story in the boating industry is so incredibly different.
Yeah, it is.
And I think it's important that we get out there, things like that mentor gentleman that you relied on to get you started and all those sorts of things. And that's a nod to the men that are in the industry that are helping the women, right?
Correct.
So that's really, I think that's a really important message we need to get out.
Yeah.
also that we as women are supporting each other and lifting
Yes.
each other, and
Yes. And that's difficult, and we know that it's I don't know, I found that it's not been easy having women support. I have to admit, and I don't know whether it's a woman thing or not, but it has been a challenge with that. But I have been very, very blessed by having mentors all the way, and these guys, and they're all men, and I work really well with men for one thing. They've not seen me as female. The ones I
Yes.
work best do not see me as female. And that's what I enjoy most. Not stopped. I've not been told, oh, Su Lin, why are you in khakis? Why are you in heels or things like that? I never had these stupid questions. And I've also been blessed by having parents that, there are three girls in the family, but we've never been made to feel your girls can't do this or can't do that. It's all been do because you can do the best you can do because you can do. And that was it. It was a given.
Yeah.
It was a given that you did that. So yeah, that for me, so when it sounds terrible, but when the issue of gender comes up,
Yeah.
there's a part of me that goes, well, why? It's about ability. If a
Okay.
man can do this, great guns. If a woman can do this, great guns, right? So this issue of gender actually, in my mind, shouldn't enter into it, because that's not how I was brought up, and it was not how I evaluated my staff or my friends. Or no, it's like, you are here because you can do it.
Yeah.
That's it. And if somebody brings in this gender issue, you're out.
Yeah.
You're out. I'm not going to discuss this with you. I can sense when somebody comes in with a sexist remark, I refuse to engage with that. It's not acceptable to me. I can work with other people who are far. And that's what happened with the 115. It just so happened it was led by a woman who was incredibly effective, and and in the times that I was losing my hair, she was calm as anything. It was brilliant. And because it's about ability, capability, what you bring to the table. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what you are. That's what we need to focus on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it is, and that's why I don't like the whole there must be a certain number of women on a board. I don't like that at all.
No.
I think it should be the board should be the people that should be there.
Should be there. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are people out there that talk about diversity and things like that, but I sometimes wonder whether they actually understand what they're actually asking about. If you tell me it's maybe 5-10 years ago, I get it, but today we've come so far. And I think people need to start asking. Don't ask about why there's no diversity. Let's ask ourselves, did we make sure that it was balanced? Did we make sure that we brought the best people to the table? Or were we just trying to make sure that we had the right percentage of women or men or races or whatever? I come from Malaysia, where racial balance is very, very important. Yes, some of our government policies are driven by race and the careful balance. And some people say, oh, it's the policies are kind of racist. I like to think about from the positive side that we need to have those policies for the balance, because we've got a multicultural and multiple races in the country. And the government just has to be very careful with that balance, because we've had in our history the possibility of things going very, very wrong. And we don't want to go back there. The younger generation don't know it. I come from a generation where I know it, when it actually destroyed a generation. We don't want to go there. So those policies are needed. We just need to have a government that's not going to go overboard with it. So the same thing with, diversity as well. We ourselves can do so much to make sure that it is balanced and not just be driven by optics or peer pressure. You gotta have more women. I had some feedback from the conference that says, the last session, why is it all men? It's all men because all the associations are men.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah.
excuse me, right? Yeah. And ICOMIA Asia is a woman. But I was saying, okay, let's not even go there. But, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we ourselves can make that difference. And I think we are at a point where individuals should push for that. Not, it's not about percentages and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's about women putting their hands up and saying, hey, can I speak at the next ICOMI conference?
Yeah,
Isn't it?
exactly.
Don't
Sit and whinge and say that, why is it all men? If you want to be in it, if you want to participate, send us a note.
Yeah.
And say, what I would have liked is, this session was all men. Next conference, I'm putting my name in. Why don't you put that line in?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, why is it all men? Why is it all Chinese? No. Right? Send me a note. That's what should happen.
Yes.
Right? I'm interested in the next one. Let me know. Or I'm going to, follow me. Follow ICOMIA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And see. Because diversity starts with us. Change starts with us. Yeah.
Fantastic. What a good interview.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Su Lin. I heard you were a powerhouse from Joe, and now I've had you opposite me on the table. I've totally worked it out.
I just it's just going back to me being in the background. Yeah, I'm glad that it of positive feedback. Yeah, as long as I like hearing from outside, because I'm pretty much the hardest on myself.
Yeah,
because there's always something. There's always something that's missing or not done and stuff like that. But I'm glad of the feedback. Yeah, very grateful. Very, very grateful.
And what do you see the future for? What would you like to see? What would your next event? What's your dream event next?
My dream event is if I could have more engagement with our members. They come forward rather than being accepting of whatever policy is there. If it doesn't work, speak up. Really, and it's changing, but Asia for the longest time has been at the receiving end of things. There's so many things that we do really well in Asia, not just the work ethic, but we've got a lot of talent here, and it's time that we, beat our chest and say, hey, we can. I'd like to see, I personally would like to see more engagement from East Asia side. Japan, Korea. The Koreans are getting very engaged. I'm getting interested parties from even China. Not China as a whole, but there are some associations that we are chatting with on how they would like to join the family in some way. So I'm seeing that, and it came out of the conference really, which was really, really good. So I'd like to see those things continue and develop. And in our next event, whenever that would be, that these guys are in those conversations, that on those panels, that it's not the usual suspects. That's really what I want to see change. And every time there's something else, there's somebody else, there's another conversation, there's some continuity, and there's some resolution on things rather than having the same agenda. Like tomorrow it's not me, but the poor thing is holding on to the same program. No, it shouldn't be the same program. We need to get traction on the key issues. Not all, just one or two of the ones that really make a difference that's going to change the rest. And that's the thing. We are getting confused by issues, but we don't understand what is that 1 or 2 things that we can do that's going to solve 10 issues? Because we just get, we get slapped around by too many things.
Yeah.
And not start drilling down and say, if I change this one regulation, sky clears.
Yes.
If I change this way, this mindset, everything clears. That's what we need to do.
That's what we need to do.
Yeah, that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Su Lin. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. I hope you all enjoyed that, listeners. I certainly did. And we should just tell people how to contact you if they need to get in contact with you.
Contact ICOMIA. You can go to info@icomia.com for any inquiries, or that would be the best way to go. And we'll definitely get back to you super fast.
Fantastic. Thanks, Su Lin.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. That was a lovely interview with Su Lin. I really enjoyed that, and I hope you did too. And we'll see you on the water soon. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate your ears. If you'd like to connect with us, you can do so by following us on Instagram @theboatprincess. That gives you some more insight visually as to what we've been up to and what we have coming up in the future. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Nikki Vo, the Boat Princess. And of course, a lovely way to connect with us and stay connected with us is to sponsor the podcast, sponsor our events, or just get involved with a collaboration with us in a way that we can both support each other to allow others to rise in the industry or be educated in the industry, or just feel comfortable about being in the industry and being supported. So I really look forward to collaborating with any businesses out there that would like to associate their brand with ours. And of course, a simple sponsorship is to place ads on the podcast or sponsor our events, because of course we do some amazing events throughout the year and they will increase as time goes on and sponsorship increases. Networking within the industry is of course incredibly important, and especially for women, because 1, we like to support them, and 2, because every now and then having a female dominated event is a nice thing to have. So we really appreciate the sponsorship of those events. You guys, I really appreciate you listening to the podcast. I thank you so much for doing so. I would love it if you could review the podcast, and that will extend our reach. And until the next episode, I'll see you on the water soon.